Welcome, Kristina Eilbacher, to the Physician Assistant Forum that is designed to shed some light on the PA profession and the physician assistant studies, and to inspire and motivate applicants who are applying for the PA program. The questions are designed to shed some light on the profession and give some information to general audience who are thinking about physician assistant. So thank you for agreeing to the interview, and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Just to go in a chronological order, what was your undergrad and what were you doing before you applied to PA school?
So I graduated from Northeastern University in Boston, Massachusetts in 2009 with my degree in Bachelor's of Science with a focus in athletic training. So over the course of my undergrad career, I worked with athletes, particularly who got injured on the sports field. And it was my way to get into medicine. I really wanted to combine my love of sports with medicine. So that's why I chose athletic training. And then after I graduated, I worked in a physical therapy clinic back at home in New York and Connecticut, and I worked as a physical therapy aide and then as well as an athletic trainer with youth athletes playing football. And then that was especially around the time when concussion education was huge, so I was a vital part of that movement. And I worked in those clinics to really gain a lot of patient care experience before applying to PA school.
Oh, okay, so were you thinking about PA school while you were doing this, or this was after the fact? Because you did have a career as an athletic trainer and you did work with patients.
Correct, yes. So while I was getting my degree in athletic training, I worked with hands-on with patients for all 5 years of my university. So I really got a good grasp on how to talk to patients and really whether or not this was for me. And then after I graduated, I worked for a little bit, but then my girlfriends actually decided to move out of the country and move to New Zealand. So I left the country for a little bit, made wine, and that is the time where when you're picking grapes in the middle of the fields, you really have a lot of time to think. And so that is when I decided ultimately that I wanted to do more in medicine. I wanted to be able to care for truly sick patients, not just athletes who were injured. So once I got back to the United States, I really focused my energy towards achieving that goal. And I truthfully was debating between medical school and PA school. And after doing a lot of research, because at that time, PAs weren't as well known. Even my parents didn't know what a PA was. So I had to do a lot of research. I sought out shadowing opportunities, really tried to understand the difference between going down the medical school route versus the PA school route. Ultimately, I decided to go down the PA school route because of the reasons of I wanted to get into this field as quickly as possible, but then also to the fact of being able to go down one path of a certain specialty and then be able to switch and have that flexibility. And then in addition, having that work-life balance ability. So that is how I came about, decided to go down the PA school route, and it's honestly been the best decision I've ever made.
And you talked about the PA profession not being as commonly known. Sadly, it is still the state. A lot of people still don't know what the PAs are, and one of my motivation to do this forum is to bring some knowledge to general public and to give information to students who are thinking about PA school. Interesting, it's that people associate wine to forget stuff, but you started making wine and that's when you reflected on your future and you made a thoughtful decision during that quiet, calm, peaceful process. Interesting. You touched about what aspects of the PA profession brought you to this compared to other medical field. Work-life balance you mentioned the flexibility about changing your specialty midway if you chose to. Did all the studies that you did in your athletic trainer translate to PA school, or did you have to do more classes to be eligible to apply to PA school? Prerequisites and things like that.
Yeah, I absolutely had to take more classes. So I had anatomy and physiology. I had our basic sciences from athletic training. I actually, Northeastern gave us amazing opportunity of working with cadavers. So I had that experience, but I certainly had to take more classes. So it took me about 2 years or so, 2.5 years after I got back to the country to take all of those prerequisite courses, including microbiology, organic chemistry, all of that. And so what I did was I wrote down a list of the PA schools that I wanted to apply to. Particularly, my goal was always Duke. And so I based all of my prerequisite courses off of that. And at the time, a lot of the schools had various prerequisite requests. And so I tried to touch on all of those. So yes, it certainly took me a long time. I worked at the same time of taking those classes, and I kept my mind on the ultimate goal, which was to get into PA school. So I didn't really care what it took to get there.
Okay. You mentioned that you had to take more prerequisites. Athletic trainer is an undergrad degree?
Correct.
Correct. And you said you had your sciences, you had including cadaver labs, anatomy and physiology, and you still had to take more classes to be eligible to apply.
Correct.
Interesting.
Yes.
You mentioned your goal was always Duke. Mm-hmm. Why Duke?
I remember when my brother's 4 years older than me, and I remember when he was applying to college, and we came down here to visit Duke University, and this was just like my ultimate goal. But at the time when I was applying to college, Duke did not have an athletic training undergrad program, so it was never on my radar to come here. Being a former basketball player, again, this was just the pinnacle of where I wanted to be. So then when I started researching PA programs, and I found that Duke's PA program was #1 in the country, this is where the profession started, all of these things really just checked the boxes. And as I went along the journey of getting into PA school, ultimately, Duke has been, again, the best choice I could have ever made.
Okay. And they were lucky to get you too. How many programs did you apply to? How many interviews did you get?
I applied to a lot. I applied to about 11 schools, pretty much up and down the East Coast. I'm from New York, so I wasn't necessarily tied to New York, to wanting to stay there, but I wanted to make sure that I had various options. And so I remember vividly, I automatically got rejected from one because I just applied, even though I didn't take one of their prereqs that they were asking for. But I said, let me just do that. And so I believe I had maybe about 4 or 5 interviews. And I ended up getting into one school and waitlisted at another school. So I was very lucky that Duke was my one school that I got into.
Okay. And this was before the time of Zoom. So all the interviews you had to go in person.
Correct. Yes, exactly.
Could be cost prohibitive too for people.
Right.
What particular qualities and skills do you believe made you a strong candidate for the PA profession?
I think my hands-on experience that I've had over the course of the years, again, I wasn't going straight from undergrad, so I had to have that experience of working with patients, just being in the workforce in general, allows you to have a little bit more maturity in that sense, and I think more assurance that this is truly what you want to do. Again, I think also having just overall life experience. You know, I left the country for a little bit. I learned about a different culture, and all of those things I wrote about in my statement piece, as well as I expressed all of that on the job interviews, or excuse me, on the PA school interviews. So I think bringing that worldly view, that holistic approach is what I conveyed and what I still convey in my own practice. Those are the things that I think set me apart during the interviews.
Yeah, a lot of people don't take the application essay that seriously, but that is your stepping stone into even getting an interview. So if you're able to articulate that well, your experience as an athletic trainer and you live in the country and getting a little more mature overview, I'm sure was one of the major reasons you got an interview.
Right.
And then when it's an interview, what did you do at the interview?
Yeah, I will say I remember interviewing at one institution, and one of the doctors asked me, "Why did you get mediocre grades at a mediocre university?" And I had a 3.7 or so GPA, but still. So I think, you know, I was faced with challenges along the way, but it helped me to grow and to become more confident. And then ultimately, I translated that to my interview at Duke, which turned out to be successful. And I think as well along the way, I was interviewing them just as much as they were interviewing me. And I remember vividly being at the Duke interview, and they really wanted to get to know me as a person, not just me on paper or me based on my GPA. So that's ultimately why I chose the Duke PA program, in addition to getting in there. But I think it was important for me to really recognize and be with a program that wanted to invest in me as an individual.
I'm just curious, what was the answer to the doctor who got a mediocre grade from a mediocre program?
Well, I explained that with the athletic training degree, I was in school, I had a job, I was an athlete as well. I played rugby for our women's team, so I was traveling with my own sport, but then I also had to travel with the football team that I was working with the basketball team that I was working with. So I really learned to multitask, and I still defended. I was proud that I had the 3.7 GPA.
That is pretty impressive. You were not just a student going, you had a lot of other commitments, and I would take somebody who has so many varied interests and was able to accomplish all that, and with 3.7 GPA, than somebody who just went to school and did nothing else with a 4.0.
Right.
Yeah, that's a pretty good answer. Now you're in PA school, in the program of your choice, Duke. How many PA students were in your class? How many came with prior healthcare experience, and how many came straight up out of undergrad?
We were one of the largest programs in the country, upwards of 90 to 95 students in our class. And the majority, I think, the majority came with prior healthcare experience. I think only one came from directly from undergrad. So again, everyone had a wealth of knowledge. I remember vividly, we were talking about EKGs, and it was going right over my head. And so one of our classmates used to be an EKG tech, and so he held a separate little course on the weekend for anyone that was interested in that. So again, really coming in to a class with prior experience was extremely helpful, because you just bounce ideas off of everyone. We would all work together on the weekends to study, and everyone would bring in their prior experience. So it was extremely helpful to be in a class that's like that.
Yep, EKG can be intimidating. I remember in my class too, I was a physical therapist before, and in my class we had people with exercise physiology background, nurses, EMTs, and I was taught by EKG more from my classmates. So yes, having somebody in your class with prior healthcare experience definitely helps pool all your resources and help each other out. Mm-hmm. It is very competitive to get into the program, but once we get into the program, we all become one class. We want everybody to succeed, and we want our friends to succeed as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, that is one of the reasons why I look very fondly back on the PA schooling, because we were suffering together. Like I said, we all really just bounded together on the weekends, studied together, and succeeded together.
Yeah. I don't want the pre-PAs watching this to be scared of suffering together. It is an intense program. I remember my professor saying PA school is like putting a fire hose in your mouth and turning it full blast. But it is doable as long as you're prepared and come prepared with what to expect. So talk to me about your experience in PA school. What was your direct year like? Did you have a social life, boyfriend, family, etc.? And given your athletic trainer background, did you find any subjects easier compared to other classmates? You mentioned about EKG, that somebody else helped you. Were you able to help somebody else in your anatomy, physiology, your orthopedic exam, things like that?
Yeah. The didactic year was tough. It definitely was. Again, I think going into this knowing that I was making a career out of this was the ultimate end goal and the ultimate motivator. I came into PA school with, again, moving from New York down to North Carolina, so no family around. I didn't know anyone down here. I was dating someone, and ultimately we broke up during PA school, which looking back, was a little bit of a blessing. But I truly dove into the PA school, made wonderful friends, and again, we all supported each other. So I remember a classmate saying how tough it was to even get to the bank. But I think time management was a huge quality that I already had, but I really had to continue to work on during PA school. So I would get up in the mornings, I would exercise. At the same time that I'm working out, I'm studying. And then I would go to school. And then afterwards, I would give myself a break. I wouldn't just dive right into it, because I knew how much my mental well-being was also important. And then I also went to bed by 9 or 10 p.m. And if I didn't get my work done that day, or study as much as I wanted to, that's okay. Maybe I'll get up a little bit earlier the next day. But time management was huge. And again, figuring out what your motivator is and remembering that helped to push me forward. Some of the courses that came a little bit easier were anatomy and physiology. I certainly was not scared going into the cadaver lab because I had that opportunity as an undergrad. And the orthopedic section was also a little bit easier for me. So those were opportunities where I was able to help my classmates, to help them to understand, to help them come up with different mnemonics to remember all of those special tests. So yes, I think, again, everyone was able to bring a little bit of their background into the teachings and even outside the classroom.
Yeah. This shows that, some people say, oh, you became a PA because you took the easy way out, compared to going to an MD school. But PA school is tough. You're still required to learn everything an MD is supposed to learn in their 4 years of school in 2 years. It's very condensed, it's very intense. My classes were from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and we had to find time to study and do everything the rest of the time. So for anybody who thinks PA school is easy, it is not.
It absolutely is not.
What are some of the biggest challenges you face in PA school?
Some of the biggest challenges that I faced, I think during second year, was probably not competing with the medical students, because I never wanted to view it that way, but you're on rotations with medical students. And I think it's an opportunity to work as a collaborative team, but then also to educate, whether it's the medical students or your preceptors who are medical docs. Sometimes they may give preference to the medical students, but I think as APPs, it's important to also make ourselves stand out and make sure that everyone recognizes our importance and our role within this team. So that's something that I learned to graciously navigate, and it just helped me to become a more confident provider.
What was the elective rotation in PA school, and why did you choose that?
The two elective rotations that I had were...
So your program offered two?
Correct, yes. Was neurosurgery and gastroenterology. I chose those, because as an undergrad and my postgraduate career in athletic training, I was really focused on the brain and concussions in particular. I remember playing in rugby. Obviously, we've had a lot of people with concussions, and one of my teammates actually suffered second impact syndrome. So that's really where my love of the brain and my interest came from. And then gastroenterology I chose just because growing up I had some GI issues, and I thought it was always very interesting, and I enjoyed those chapters during school. So I was very lucky to get both of those electives, and clearly now being in the neurosurgery specialty for the past 10 years, I am forever indebted that I was given that opportunity as a PA student.
Interesting. So after PA school, tell me your journey to this part. What did you do? What was the first job like, and how did you grow in your career?
Yes, so you being my mentor since PA school, I knew that you were looking to expand the inpatient side of the neurosurgery department. I also looked at other positions as well, at other institutions, mainly neurosurgery. I did look at a GI job as well too, but ultimately I knew that I wanted, as a first job, I wanted to be on the inpatient side. Because you just have so many resources around you, and I love the inpatient. I think it's exciting, but I ultimately chose to start in Duke's neurosurgery program as a first job because I knew that I was going to get the support, mainly from you, but also to the entire team. And I think the groundwork that you laid for PAs within the team of neurosurgery really helped to solidify my decision to stay here. I wasn't confident that I would get that type of support at other institutions, and so ultimately I decided to accept the job here at Duke in the neurosurgery department, which I've been there now for 10 years. I knew that taking my first job, I'm not the type of person to just take a job for a little bit and then start looking. I knew that wherever I wanted to start, I wanted to also probably finish. So I certainly was looking for a career and not just a job.
Yeah. Well, having you doing your elective rotation neurosurgery, I was pretty impressed on your work ethic, your approach to patients, your dedication. So it was no-brainer to open up a job for you, and I'm glad you accepted it. So we were the lucky one, more than you. And I've seen you grow in your career from being a new grad to now. Tell me in your own words, how did you progress and to the point where you're now? I don't want to give anything away to the audience. I just want the tension to build up so you can tell me where you are now.
It was a long, hard journey. Again, I remember even being on the neurosurgery rotation as a student, and I was very scared because you're there amongst neurosurgeons. I mean, it's intimidating. But I think, again, you giving me the confidence, telling me, make sure after you see this case that you present the patient the next morning. So having a mentor was vital. And just having that support and being able to get a gentle push in the right direction. And then, so certainly as a new grad PA, it's a lot of studying. So the studying and the learning never ends after school. I wanted to feel confident in what I'm doing on a daily basis. I wanted to do that for my patients. I remember during my initial orientation, I was working with one of our colleagues, and it was time for him to leave, and I stayed, and I held the pager for maybe like 2 hours, but I got my first page. Hey, this person has a fever, what do you do? My mind went blank. It was scary. But so then I turned to you, and we talked through it, and that was probably the last time I ever asked you how to work up a fever. So again, even though I learned all of that in school, it's scary as you're in your first job. And so, again, I'm very thankful that I had the resources around me to help to support me, not only within the neurosurgery department, but other ancillary services throughout the hospital. So it was a lot of growth over the past 10 years. I have moved into more leadership roles throughout my career. There was an opening to become a team lead within our neurosurgery department about 6 years into my career. And I've always been a leader, whether it was in my sports realm or in the classroom. So it's something that I have evolved into and continue to evolve into. I wanted to give back in a sense as well too. I knew that it's important to have PAs in leadership roles throughout the institution because it's sort of rare to see that, because we want to take care of patients. We want to have that hands-on connection with patients and work closely with our MD colleagues. So we don't see many people in leadership roles. So I became the team lead, and that was challenging. It taught me a lot of lessons, and then it also continued to give me a broader view of how the hospital system runs, which I have really dove into and have really enjoyed learning that aspect. Which then brings me now into my current role as director.
But going back to team lead, I remember bringing you into the PA, as a PA in Duke neurosurgery. I remember orienting to the neurosurgery. I remember teaching all this stuff, but then I had to sit down and you did my evaluation as a team lead. it was one of my proudest moments. So yeah, just to mention that you were a very good team lead.
Oh, thank you.
So go on.
I think for me, it's always been important to have leaders who understand what you do. And, you know, I think having PAs in leadership roles who understand from the ground level how the day-to-day operations work is important. And again, in leadership right now, you see a lot of amazing individuals who have MBAs, who have Masters of Healthcare Administration, who were former bedside nurses. You don't see many PAs, and why is that? And I've always questioned that. And so
But you gave an answer to that before. PAs, they come into the profession wanting to take care of patients, right? One of the reasons why they don't go into MD route is because you get to spend more time with the patients, and that is the thing that attracts many other people into the PA profession.
Absolutely.
So naturally, you don't see them going into an administrative role because they do enjoy taking care of patients, hands-on, spend more time with the patients, but that's the reason why. But I hope things change for the better a little bit.
Yep. I absolutely agree with you, Senthil. I think that the majority of PAs go to school because they want to take care of patients. And when an opportunity arose for me to become a leader overseeing advanced practice providers throughout the Children's Hospital at Duke Hospital, I jumped on it because I want to continue to further advance the PA profession within that leadership realm. I have been fortunate that I can also work clinically. So I work clinically still about 3 to 4 times a month, which I absolutely love. But it's also been has given me the opportunity to be an advocate for not only PAs, but also nurse practitioners, but really be a face for physician assistants throughout the healthcare system.
Let me pause you there. You kind of slowly dwell into a new role. We talked about you being as a team lead. What is your current role now?
My current role is Director of the Center for Advanced Practice, overseeing APPs throughout the Children's Hospital.
And when you say APPs, it's physician assistants and nurse practitioners.
And nurse practitioners, correct.
Okay.
Yes. So there are anywhere from 130 to 160 people underneath me, APPs working for our children and within the Children's Hospital.
Impressive. So from a PA, new grad PA, to a team lead, now you're a director for advanced practice providers. Impressive. It is very refreshing for me to see PAs in leadership roles, as much as I like bedside medicine. Is a lot of administrators make sweeping changes, how PAs work, how their workflow goes and all that stuff, and it's sometimes very irritating and disappointing is because they have no clue how we function. And somebody making those sweeping changes without talking to the frontline providers and how we do our work can be very demoralizing, as well as disrupting the workflow. And even though their changes are well intended, it doesn't have the desired effect. It actually backfires. And then they go back to reinventing the wheel again. So it is refreshing to see more PAs go into administrative role. You knew how you started working, right? So I'm sure when you make changes or when you recommend changes, they're going to come from your experience, what works, what doesn't work. So yes, I'm very eager to see what changes you bring to our profession, and I'm very glad and proud that you're representing the PAs in the administrative role as well.
Thank you, thank you. And I've been there alongside of you, seeing some of those changes come down. And I always question, did anyone talk to us? Did anyone, really try to understand? So I've made it a point, being in this new director role, to really try to talk to all of the APPs first, when I first started. I want to understand each individual role, because everyone's role is a little bit different depending on their specialty. And I wanted to get their perspective and not just jump to conclusions on my own end. So I think if more leaders have set aside the time to do that and really invest that vulnerability and openness, then I think we can move forward as an organization. and some of these changes might be a little bit more palatable if we at least try to understand where everyone's coming from.
That's the right approach. Now, a lot of things you learn on a job. You're a born leader. You have natural instincts. You have the leadership drive and skill. But now you're in a leadership role in a much bigger scale, in a bigger institution, with lots of moving parts. So are you only relying on your work experience, or are you doing something else to equip yourself with the required knowledge and required skill set, not only to do your work properly, but also to gain some credibility, and when you come up with some suggestions, that people listen to you?
Yeah, I knew that I couldn't rely just on my prior knowledge as a PA, especially because I've only done neurosurgery, so I'm a little bit siloed in that sense. So I decided to go back to school to get my MBA, which I'm currently almost done. But the reason why I decided to do that is because I wanted to have that background knowledge. I wanted to be able to go into these meetings, into these rooms with people who are mainly business people. So I wanted to be able to talk the talk and have that confidence and really understand their perspective, because their perspectives are quite different than a practitioner's perspective. So I felt that being able to marry those two experiences together would make me an even more successful leader. So I really put the work in for the past almost 2 years now, going back to school while also being a practitioner on the floor, and now in this new role and having a family and ancillary things that I've had to deal with. So this schooling was definitely very difficult, but I think that it has really helped me tremendously just to at least build that confidence and to have that verbiage to go into some of these meetings.
Yeah. So it makes a big difference for somebody who is a clinician to go into leadership roles, because like you said, you bring leadership roles are going to make sweeping changes in the clinical realm, right? They are making some changes how PAs practice, how nurse practitioners practice, how the clinic is run, how patients are taken care of, right? But like you said, if it's coming only from a business perspective, they're going to meet a lot of resistance. Not all changes are going to go smoothly. There's going to be some rough patches. But you have put in the effort. You already have a clinical background, a strong clinical background. You know how things work. And now you've taken the effort and time to learn the business aspect. And so when you go and talk to the business-minded people, now you're not only talking as a business person, but you're also talking as a clinician. Mm-hmm. And I think that is going to make any changes that you recommend more palatable. I'll be more willing to listen to any changes that you recommend compared to somebody who's, had a consultant firm who's done only an MBA and had no idea how patient care works.
Exactly, right? Exactly. And even currently, when I'm making decisions, the patient care is at the forefront of my brain, not necessarily how many dollars we're going to make. And so having my unique perspective of both the clinical side and now the business side really keeps me grounded to always remember that patient care comes first. That's why we're all here. So I can have the conversations with the mainly business people and remind them of our ultimate goal. So hopefully all of the experiences that I'm gaining get meshed well together for positive outcomes.
One of the reasons why I invited you in the forum was not just to talk about just the PA profession or the clinical aspect, because this is more for the pre-PAs. People are applying to PA profession. People want to learn about the PA profession. But I also wanted them to know that there's lots of room to grow as a PA. PA's taken all kind of challenges and they excel in doing that. And I wanted to show that there are leadership opportunities in the role, and then how you can move up in your career, not only as a clinician but also as a visionary to bring changes to the profession, how PAs practice as well. So I'm glad you took up my invite and came to the program.
Thank you.
As a clinician now, as administrator, has your perception of the PA role changed in any way since you started?
Yes, being a PA now in this field for 10 years, I have definitely seen changes, but also my perception of the PA program, or excuse me, profession has changed. Going into this, I thought my only route was really only taking care of patients, again, which is my ultimate love. But I've also, over the years, have had opportunities to go back to the PA program at Duke and teach, and I was a part of the application process. So I was able to dive a little bit into that teaching realm, as well as clinically teaching. So now I'm a part of teaching the residents as they all come through as interns. So again, the perception of just how much I can do has definitely evolved over the years. And then again, now moving into more of these leadership roles. There was a different face of leadership when I first started, and I'm trying to break through that. And I think watching you and watching other PAs who have helped to pave the way has given me a lot of that confidence and opened up the doorways for people like myself. But I think the opportunities are really endless, and I'm excited to see all the changes that can continue to come.
Yeah. One thing I want to know that the pre-PAs know as well. Once you gain some experience, you do teach the MD residents when they come along. If you're in an academic setting, a new MD intern comes into neurosurgery residency program, you're in the forefront, you're responsible to teach them bedside clinical medicine, bedside procedures. We have PAs teaching them in the OR as well, all the basic skills. So PAs do have a lot of education roles they play if they're in the right setting, in an academic setting. And they do teach the MDs and the doctors and sometimes the surgeons as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because especially in our field, on the inpatient side and with surgery, the surgeons are in the operating room. So who's teaching the interns on the floor? It's really the PAs. And that's been my most prideful aspects of our job as well too. I love being able to spread that knowledge.
So you've been a clinical PA, you're now in the administrative role, you had teaching roles as well. Now as a director, you interview PAs applying for, and even nurse practitioners applying for a position in the hospital. So when you interview people, what do you think makes a successful PA? What qualities are you looking for in a PA when you decide to hire them?
Yeah, I'm looking for whether or not someone has that passion, and I can tell. A lot of my initial interviews are over the phone, and I can tell whether or not someone is passionate about what they're doing, what they have done in the past. I also look for those with time management skills, and just various backgrounds and what you're really bringing to the service line. I don't need you to have 10 years of experience prior. New grads are great. We love having new grads in these different specialties, but are our new grads willing to learn and really step into this new role as a professional? And so those are the qualities that we're really looking for.
Yeah. You always hire for attitude and you can teach them, but you cannot teach, basic bedside manners.
Exactly.
Right? You can always teach knowledge, but attitude, they come with it.
Yes.
And that's what you're looking for.
Yes.
So you've been working as a full-time PA, and then you took up a leadership role, and then you decided to pursue an MBA. You're married, you have 2 children. How do you manage your work-life balance, and how do you set your priorities? You're like a Renaissance woman to me. And yes, talk about how you're able to keep everything in balance and still be very productive.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge and something that I worked on over the years. So when I first became a PA, I was only dating someone. And I used to bring work home in that sense. So especially as a new grad, you have so much information that you want to share, and you're going home and studying. So that was tough. It was definitely tough. And over the years, I learned to use my time after work before I got home to compartmentalize a little bit, but also in a sense just leave work at work. We deal with a lot of really heavy things, and so being able to talk to someone, even outside of your family, is important. And then when I started having kids, again, those skills that I developed and learned became even more important. Now I don't get my free time because I have to pick up the kids after school. So in the car, they're screaming, so I don't really get that opportunity to shut my brain off as easily from work. But I've learned that my priorities have definitely shifted. So when I am at work, I am solely focused on what I need to accomplish at work. And then same thing for when I'm at home. Yes, I'll still answer questions, I'll answer my pager if it goes off, I'll answer emails, but I also need to recognize that this is my family time in that sense, and they need my attention at that time. So it's important, I think, to really dedicate your time and your energy in the present moment. Another thing that has really helped me is just being able to find time to exercise and being able to find time for myself as well. With all that I have going on, I've really learned to prioritize and time manage, and so all of these skills that I've learned years ago have been widely needed right now.
Interesting. So Kristina, now you've been a PA, you have a leadership role, you're pursuing an MBA, you're the director of the advanced practice providers, which include physician assistants and nurse practitioners. So what is your goal once you finish your MBA?
Yeah, so in my current role as a director, my goal is to continue to advance the PA profession and really continue to have a seat at the table. So right now in a lot of healthcare institutions, you have our MD leaders and you have our nursing leaders, but you don't have PAs at the seat of the table. And so how do we fit into leadership throughout various institutions? And so that's my goal in my current role, and really is ultimately my goal as I'm pursuing this MBA and as I continue to gain more experience in leadership roles. Ultimately, my goal is to be a chief operating officer of an institution, and again, really to be that inspiration for other PAs that we can be successful in leadership roles because we understand the clinical side. And I think the value that we bring to not only patient care, but also healthcare in general.
Yeah, the cost of healthcare is rising. There's a lot of PAs are being hired in the provider role, and if we're going to see some changes that's going to affect the entire healthcare, I'm glad and I'm comforted that there are PAs like you who are assuming more leadership roles, and you can make and advocate changes not just for the healthcare but also for the profession. Yeah. So what advice would you give to somebody who's applying to PA school, who wants to pursue a PA profession and want to become a PA? Since you're now in the hiring aspect, what would you tell them to do?
Yes, I have been very fortunate over the past 10 years to really mentor a lot of high school students and college students who are considering a medical profession, and whether or not they're still debating between PA school and medical school. I've been fortunate to be able to have a lot of conversations with them, and my number one piece of advice is to really figure out your passion. And for PAs, where do you fit into the medical team, or what is your passion to fit into the medical team? I think ultimately it's a tough profession. It really is. The schooling is tough, and then even just taking care of patients and all the things that we see and deal with on a daily basis, it's not easy and it's not for everyone. But that's why I think figuring out whether or not taking care of patients is your passion, that's the number one goal. And that should be achieved well before you even consider going to PA school.
Yeah, because a lot of like you said, high school students and people even going through undergrad are looking into, okay, what profession I can become, what jobs I can get. And they talk to the student counselors, they look at labor statistics, and they say, okay, PAs in the top two professions, the fast-growing profession, you will definitely get a job after you finish PA school. And if they're choosing all that just based on those metrics, like I will have a job, I'll get a good paycheck, I'll have a good lifestyle, work-life balance. If those are the only goals they're looking in the career, they're going to get disappointed.
Yes.
Like you said, look into the profession more detail, have a passion for patient care, and if those qualities that the goals and the profession matches, then definitely they'll be a better student in the PA school, they will be a better PA when they finish, and they won't have any regrets of investing so much time into their career. Let's say somebody is a PA already, right? They're looking at this video, or they're looking into going into leadership roles themselves. What advice would you give to a PA who's working clinically, who's wanting to advance themselves, or is thinking about a leadership role? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think always remember what your motivations are. I also think it has been important for me to find mentors who have moved up into leadership roles. Whether it's a PA or not, it's important to understand their perspectives and just to provide some guidance. So, for instance, our former chair was a huge inspiration for me.
Dr. Sampson.
Dr. Sampson. He is an MD, of course, and but he went back and got his MBA. He moved up in the leadership roles throughout the neurosurgery department, and just the way that he led our team, we were always very successful, but I think when he was our chair, we became more of a team and more of a unit, and that to me was extremely inspiring. So I've always looked to him and you to figure out how you all became successful leaders. And that has really given me the confidence, and also given me sort of a roadmap for how to become a successful leader. So I think finding mentors that you trust, that you can confide in, that people that support you, those are the important things to really look out for.
Oh, impressive. Good. Well, I may have motivated you, but now you have surpassed. And I'm really, really proud of what you're achieving, and I can only imagine what heights you're going to take our profession to, and I'm so looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming into the program and answering our questions and giving a glimpse of what your life is like as a PA, both as a clinical role and now into a leadership role and administrative role. I think that a lot of information that the pre-PAs can look forward to in this, and also inspire some veteran PAs as well to set their sights high, not only for themselves, but to advance our profession as well. Yes. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Good luck to you and everything.
Thank you. This was fun.
Yeah.